I can see that. I can see it's gone live. Yeah, yeah.
So, good morning and welcome. I'm Tracey-Jane Hughes from Manage Those Things and the Business Cheerleading Club. And I'm delighted this morning to welcome Cathy Presland, who I've known for a couple of years now. And Cathy always makes me think. So I'm delighted that Cathy agreed to come on for a short conversation. And Cathy, there'll be lots of people that watch this that don't know you. So just give us a brief introduction.
Yeah, brief. So I've done a lot of things. That's not strictly true. I used to be an economist. My background's in policy, international development, government, and then about 10 years ago, I kind of evolved into coaching, really through leadership. I had a big team and managed large programs and became really fascinated about the whole what makes us tick kind of conversation. And so over those years, I've ended up working for myself and done a couple of slightly different things, but always in the realm of, helping people be more of themselves, helping them with their potential. And over probably about the last 2 or 3 years, I've really settled into a way of coaching people, which is really all about that internal potential. It's all about the human, the way that we are, the way that we think, the way the mind works. So it's very like content free. I don't do business mentoring, or I don't do, relationship mentoring. And it's like how we think about the world and how we kind of create the sorts of lives and businesses and careers that we want. So I feel like I can talk to anybody about anything, but
well,
we'll see.
I think you can. The places that I've come across you, and the work that I've read. You produce a fabulous piece of content every week, and it's thought provoking. And sometimes those discussions, are quite lengthy, and sometimes the discussions are quite short, and it gets people thinking. So that's what I love about you and what you do. And it's fascinating how you your coaching style and how you get people to think about themselves in a broader way sometimes, but sometimes in a deeper way. And I think that's a fascinating element in itself.
It's really fascinating. I know you've got a topic you want to focus on, but just on that, TJ, I often come across people who are looking for something outside of themselves. They're looking for like a technique or a tactic, or even, when I find my passion or whatever it is, we think that there's some things that when we find it, it's information that's going to, suddenly catapult our business or whatever it is. We think there's a like a secret and an answer, and actually, that's not where answers come from. Like that stuff is important too, but it isn't the source of what it is people are looking for. And so that's kind of the switch, is that when we go inside, then those things also come, but they're not the place to look for the answer.
Yes. And that leads swiftly and smoothly into the topic that I would like just to discuss with you, really, because it's a topic that business owners really, really struggle with. And I know you have lots of coaching clients that you work with this particular issue on, and that's focus. When people start up a business, they are really focused on growing that business. And then a business is multifaceted, and we as individuals are multifaceted. So how on earth does a business owner create focus so that they can move their business on?
Yeah. I mean, that's like such a big question. I had I'm doing this advanced training at the moment, and I was away. So I was away on the course. It was a couple of weeks ago. Was there for 5 days, and so we do a little bit of peer coaching during the week. And I was coaching somebody on, it wasn't on focus, but it was around business and business growth. And we had a really fascinating discussion. We started off about like, well, what is a business anyway? What even is this thing that we think we're creating? And like sometimes that's something just to ask people to reflect on, that is, what is it they think their business is? And people will give all sorts of different answers. And to me, it looks it looks like, when I'm in my most clear-headed moments, it looks like it's this objective thing outside of me, like I'm creating something, like I might be creating a Lego model. You know, it's something that is that I am creating in a way that I put some of my own creative input into, and obviously I have preferences to do certain things over other things. And I think when we don't see it that way, when we see it as if it's something that is meaning something about ourselves, then that's when we can start to struggle with what is this thing that is becoming very entangled in this sense of who we are. So I guess that's the first place to look, is what even, you know, if you have a business, what even is that? Like, what is this thing that you see that you're creating, and where are you entangling it with your own sense of self-worth, your own sense of value, your own kind of like real deep meaning of who we actually are. And where you can see the separations from that, then I think it's much easier for somebody to know what needs to be done. So if I'm building a Lego model, you know, I'm sorry for the trivial example, but
no, like it's good.
If I'm building a Lego model and I think, oh, I'm going to try these bricks, and when I don't like how that works, then I'll dismantle it and I'll add some other bricks. I'm putting myself into it and I'm doing the best that I can, but I'm not attached to one way working better than another way. It's like I'm in that completely experimental mode, and I've got an idea in my head of what I want, but I don't make it mean something about me that it can't possibly mean. And our sense of who we are absolutely doesn't come from the things outside of us, no matter how much it might look like that to people, that they think it's about the relationship or the children or the job, or, you know, we wrap our sense of self in so many things externally. But if we can pull that apart, then we can so much more easily find, if it's, you know, focus, if it's the knowing what to do, then seeing it in that way. And it's like, it sounds like I'm giving an instruction, or see it in that way, but what I'd suggest is just somebody just takes it on as an exploration. Like, what do they see in there? Do they agree? Do they disagree? To what extent does it look, you know, one way or the other way? And in different moments it might look differently.
Yeah. So, I mean, it's sort of, you touched on it right at the start, Cathy, with people sort of not knowing necessarily what their business is. And sometimes people, an example within the Business Cheerleading Club is that, you know, people come in because they want to help focus on one aspect and move forward, which is fantastic, because that aspect does need a little bit of work doing to it. And our business is also our life. That's why I think focus becomes a issue. There need to focus on this, because, but what you're saying is, if you take it all off, you're whole, but in a different way.
Yeah. So if we see that, like, who we are is something that is just just exists regardless of anything that we do outside of ourselves, it's completely neutral of circumstances, that we are not what we do. Like, we've invented this thing called business, we've invented this thing called jobs, and we forget that these are just things that we've invented in today's society. It looks like they're really real and they're really important. I had a client this week and we were talking about confidence and self-esteem, and she said, it's so important to me to do well in my job. Like, I feel it's the real sense of who I am. And I know that that's, like, she's being completely truthful with me. Like, she really sees the world like that.
Yeah.
But if we're able to take a step back from that and say, of course, like, that's really important. I turn up to do this job and I want to do a good job. Like, why wouldn't we want to do a good job at anything we do, whether it's cooking a meal or showing up to work or running a business? But at the end of the day, this is not the thing that defines me. Like, I am a human being, regardless of what I do, of who I am, of what relationship I'm in, of, you know, where I am, how much money I have. Like, I have a sense of humanness without any of those things, that it's not at all my well-being, like internal well-being. I don't mean kind of how much money I've got in the bank well-being, but my well-being is not related to the things outside of me. And we all know that at certain points. We all have that, you know, those moments when you're going for a walk and you think, goodness, everything's so beautiful in the world. And when we touch that absolute sense of peace and yeah, just beauty, and just that sort of real just sense of being alive. So it's so for me, it's the separation. I was actually drawing a little diagram for a client earlier. I don't know if this will help. It was in her context, but I'll show it in this context. But it's almost like this sense of peace and this sense of well-being, for me, it exists all of the time. Yeah. And sometimes we can feel it directly. We're in real connection with it. And then sometimes the kind of the other end, there's a lot of noise in our head that gets in the way. And sometimes we're aware that it's noise, you know, I'm worrying about this thing, but I don't really need to worry about, but it feels worrying. And sometimes we know not to pay attention to it. We can kind of see through it. But sometimes all we can do is connect with the noise in our head. And that's when, so if somebody, you know, kind of come back to focus, when somebody's feeling overwhelmed or confused, or they don't know, you know, in that real kind of state of, gosh, nothing's working and what am I doing, and that real sort of mental turmoil, what they're doing is all they can hear is the noise. It's the noise that's being generated in our brain. And like, that doesn't take us anywhere other than just a noisy place. That's not the place to look for answers. And it's you know, and at other times we can think, oh my goodness, I feel like I've got a lot of things to do. Oh well, we put it to one side and we connect back with what's the next thing on my list, what's the next thing. And then on other occasions, you know, we don't have the noise, and people say it's like being in the flow. I knew exactly. I was on a call last week actually, and somebody was saying, oh, I had this fantastic day. I went from one thing to another thing, and occasionally I'd get these sort of pings of thought in my head, but I didn't pay any attention. I just got back, and then when one task was finished, the next thing came naturally, and I had half of a list, but I just knew, you know, when we're in those real moments of flow, and that's the only difference, is that this is obviously something that we think, oh, if I could be in this state all of the time, life would be perfect. And the reality is we're not in that state, you know, not me, not you, not anybody's in that state all of the time. Yeah. So there's a certain, like, there's kind of, for me, it's an understanding of what's going on, and also acceptance of what's going on. Is if I feel too busy, overwhelmed, I don't know what to do, oh well. Like, that's how I feel.
And accepting those feelings, they are feelings and we can't change them, and that's just how it is. But it's then, how do we change our state to work out, okay, what's our next step? It's not necessarily what focus is, but what's our next step? Is it about drinking water? Is it about going for a walk? Is it about doing that next thing off the list? Or is that next thing on the list the thing that's actually not important anymore? It's about, you know, cooking tea, or it's about, you know, speaking to somebody, or getting somebody else to do that thing that's on the list.
Yeah. And I think when we ask ourselves the question, okay, what do I know to do? Then any of those things might come up as an answer. It might be that all we do is hear the noise of the turmoil in our head, or it might be, oh, I'm just going to take a 5-minute break, make a cup of tea, and come back to it. And what we're doing in that moment when we're asking ourselves that question is we're tapping back into this. It's like, what do we know underneath the noise? And so it isn't like, I would never try to work with somebody to change the state, because that's, to me, that's giving a kind of credence. Like, if you woke up in the morning and you'd had a dream that you'd been on, my husband did it the other day. He woke up and he said, oh my God, I left my bag in Ethiopia. Now he just traveled to Ethiopia. So in my mind, I'm thinking, oh, he hasn't been to Ethiopia this week. Like, that's really weird. I thought I saw him with his bag. You know, like I'm playing this, like he said it to me like it had really happened. And so I'm playing this. I thought I saw him with his bag yesterday, you know, in my head. Well, of course, he'd had a dream. So, and then I saw him, he's telling me about his dream. So of course, when I thought, in the moment that I thought, has he really left his bag in Ethiopia? He did leave a cupboard full of clothes in Ethiopia. So, you know, it's not beyond the realm of possibility. Like when I thought it looked real in my head, I'm playing the, oh, okay, so what does he need to do to get his bag back? When I realized it was a dream, well, I didn't need to do anything. He was just telling me about a true dream of how interesting. Okay, so you drove your bag was in Ethiopia. Okay. So like that's how it looks to me, is that when somebody's telling me I'm overwhelmed or I'm in this state or I'm in a, whatever the state is, it's like they're telling me about some dream they're having. So I don't feel the need for me to do anything. And I certainly don't feel, you know, he's not going to go to Ethiopia to get his bag. He had a dream about it. So to me, it looks like that. Like there's never any need to change anything or respond to something that isn't real. The only thing you can do, of course, if he really, and we all have dreams, don't we? We wake up and we just, like, it looks really real in that moment. In that moment he woke up, he probably got a sense that he really had left his bag on the train in Ethiopia. and probably instantaneously he felt the need to do something. And sure, if somebody has that feeling, like this feels really real, and most of us walk around like that all of the time, it feels really real that our husband doesn't love us as much as we think he should, or the business isn't growing as, you know, if these things that we experience feel really real, for as long as they feel real, it feels like we should do something about them. But if we can see, actually, I'm generating this reality through the things that are going on kind of randomly in my brain, or sometimes out of habits of thinking patterns, and, you know, wherever it's coming from, it doesn't matter. If we can see that actually it's not as real as we think it is, and maybe there's something else to do, we will automatically see it differently. It's like that moment of waking up from a dream. It will shift instantaneously. So
is there a good question to ask ourselves then, Cathy, to help us to go, okay, you know, I'm feeling overwhelmed, I've got all these things on my list, you know, I've got the children screaming at me, you know, I need to be in 3 places at once, but I need to focus. I know I need to focus. What can we do? What's that question?
I'll give you the question, but the question I would ask you, like if you would give me that as a real scenario, is I would say, why do you need to focus? Like, what is it? What is it? Okay. Why is that even important to you? Because if you're in that state where it feels like you've got the kids screaming, you've got to make tea, and you've got your business, like that's the experience that you're having. So what is this focus thing even? You're looking for focus probably as a means of solving the experience of confusion. Yeah,
that's fascinating. It is, and it's interesting. I know we're coming to the end of our time together, but I had a conversation with a wonderful lady yesterday, and a lot of it was about everything came back to listening. And you and I have had a conversation about listening in the past, and what you're saying now is it's just coming back to listening to ourselves. And a lot of what people are asking, again, you said it right at the start, people are wanting a quick fix, they're wanting a checklist, they're wanting a how-to. You know, how do I run my business? How do I do this? Now, there's some things that, you know, I've had help this morning with setting my, you know, some software up on my computer. So I needed help on how to. So there are some instances of how to, but we are all different. All of our businesses will run in a very different way. The interview that I did with Nick Haynes a couple of weeks ago, you know, it was absolutely brilliant about creating a business that supports who we are, and not it being totally separate from ourselves. And again, you're saying the same thing, that it's not about the how.
It's not about the how, it's about that tuning in. So the question, I mean, to kind of answer the question that you asked rather than the scenario, is that it's like, what do I know to do in this moment? And
okay,
you know, I don't want this to sound like a prescription, but again, it comes back to
no,
listening. Like when I can, you know, when I can, like I'm in this situation where all I'm listening to is the noise, but if I can,
yeah,
you know, if I can realize that it's noise and actually shift myself a little bit here, so that
yeah,
I can start to say, well, okay, this state of confusion, what if it's not as real as it
yeah,
appears? Then the answer will come. Okay, I need to feed the children. That's the thing that needs to be done. Or maybe it's actually the kids are okay. I've got teenagers,
yeah,
they're just making a noise on the TV. I can tune it out. I don't need to pay
yeah,
attention. And then the answer comes from inside. And if it is, oh, I'm really struggling with this software, do you know what? I need to get somebody who knows more
yeah,
about this to help me, because this is not something that I can just, like, we know. And sometimes, of course, it means the
yeah,
external things, hiring somebody or finding some information, or bringing somebody to help us with the technical, the information, the kind of knowledge part of it. But that's not, in the state of confusion, that's not the answer. Is not the checklist.
yes,
The answer is not the, okay, in this
yeah,
situation always do this, because the next situation will be different. So
yes,
again, it's coming back to that coming back to what we know when we're really tuned in, to that deeper sense of knowing, rather than the noisy the
yeah.
noisy knowing.
I'm sure people will watch this and go, you haven't given me any answers at all.
I know. I have a lot of information on my website, which I can see you just posted.
And you know, these interviews were about, you know, are about tips of business, and you know, it's fascinating some of the things that are coming up. That, you know, there is no prescriptive answer. You know, yes, we can give tips to each other. You know, you do support an awful lot of people in business, of all sorts of different sizes of business, and you know, you're supporting leaders and you're supporting all sorts of wonderful things, Cathy. And you know, people want that quick fix, but if we don't know ourselves, this comes back to my conversation I had yesterday. If we don't know ourselves, and you said it at the start, you know, it's about what is it you're trying to do. You know, what is the thing that I'm creating.
Yeah, but people want the quick fix. We all want the quick fix because we feel it is going to give us more of a sense of ease, whether we call that happiness, whether we call it success, whatever label we personally put on it. And so if we realize that actually that feeling is something that exists regardless of anything else, that is something which is true about just being alive. We've got a new puppy, as you know, TJ, and I mean, he's just the personification. He's absolutely gorgeous, but he doesn't go around worrying, am I going to get more happiness from my bone, or am I going to get more happiness from going on a walk? Like, he walks around, bone time, you know, that pure, complete, pure excitement. And we were talking, my husband and I were saying, do you think dogs get psychological problems? Do you think they overthink things? And it seems like they do. Dogs sometimes get a bit tense, they get a bit up in their head. I was out for a friend yesterday whose dog didn't want to go for a walk, and then did, and we figured it was probably a mental thing, not a physical thing. She didn't have arthritis. And yeah, for sure. But when you look at somebody like the puppy, like we all have that sense of life is just wonderful. And then sometimes we put noisy thinking in the way. So the tips come from wanting to solve the feeling of unease, and so if we come back to, actually, what if I didn't need to solve this feeling of unease, and I can grow the business anyway, I can build my Lego model, you know, I can do something really fantastic, but the feeling comes from somewhere else.
So you do have an awful lot of information on your website, Cathy, which I'll put it in the comments as well, so people can follow that up, and people can work with you directly, one-to-one. And you create all sorts of different things, you know.
I do. I don't have any group programs at the moment, but I've got one brewing possibly. So I take up on the email list, come and follow me on Facebook, whatever. So you know, Cathy's on Facebook, and also on all the channels, and also I would highly recommend her weekly email that will get you thinking in new ways. So thank you so much, Cathy. Thank you,
I've loved it.
It's a pleasure to speak to you.
And I'll speak to you soon.
Yeah. Take care. Much love.
Bye-bye.